Hey, hello, friends. Thank you for joining me again for this finishing up on this quick little portrait. Started it late this morning. Portrait of my granddaughter, Lake. It's sort of a long overdue IOU for my granddaughter. She's 5, nearly 6, and has lived in our house with the rest of her family for the last 18 months or so. And she's seen lots of sketches that I did of her big brother all over the, not all over, but here and there. And she said, Bigka, they call me Bigka, when are you going to paint me? So she's got a real point. So I'm finally getting around to painting her. Of course, now that I've painted her, I very quickly, without great delay, I need to do a painting of her little sister, Tolly, who is 4 years old. So I've got myself in for some dues paying here. I'm essentially finished. Let me zoom in, get you a better angle just for a minute anyway, and zoom in on this face so you can see what's going on here. There you go. Looks a lot like my granddaughter Lake. I'm happy to report. Looks just like her. I've been a little surprised actually at how much work I've had to do. I thought I was closer to done, an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. I thought I was closer to finished than I actually was. I've spent more time making little color corrections and so forth than I had expected. But I'm finally done, at least till tomorrow. I will look at this all with fresh eyes tomorrow, and might do color glazes on top of this work tomorrow. And of course, if I do glazes, then I have to come back and do, to some degree, some highlights. I'm finding the phone, the color on this phone is so much better than the color on this print. So I'm relying on it quite heavily here in the final stages. I feel like when you finish a portrait, if you're not so sick of it, which by the way is a real possibility, that after so many hours of staring at the dang thing, you just don't want to even see it again. If you can avoid that, that by the time you get down to the things like clothing, it can really be quite fun. And of course, you can still paint yourself into a tizzy. Do you know that expression? He got himself into a tizzy. Just an emotional basket case. Another word picture. But if you can avoid getting into a tizzy, my point is, it's really fun doing clothing. I have looked often at the paintings of Hans Holbein, for instance, just as an example. Hans Holbein painted the uber famous painting of Henry VIII that we've all seen, the big portly man in opulent splendor, clothing that is just outrageous beyond description. And Hans Holbein, of course, probably wanting to keep his head, since by this time Henry had decapitated a couple of his wives already. If a man decapitates his wives, he would certainly not have any trouble decapitating the court artist if he was unhappy with his work. So I've often thought about Hans Holbein, rubbing his neck as he painted dear old Henry VIII. But more than that, I feel like I can, to some degree, enter into the soul of Henry VIII, because I feel like I know how he felt, and in a good sense now. Once he had the likeness of the king's face, once that was done, which I imagine is what I've done here, which is you do it first, you do the hard stuff first before you can go playing around with something as frivolous as clothing. But Hans Holbein, when he was doing the clothing, and it wasn't just that painting, but all his paintings, and many other artists, the same thing. There's a certain, I probably won't surprise you to hear, there's a certain sense of power that one gets by doing super realistic painting. And especially when it's something as abstract, if you will, as clothing. Um, there's a real sense of empowerment, would be a more socially acceptable word instead of power, but really it is power. You have a real sense of look at this. I can so render the heck out of this stuff. I just see Holbein cackling to himself in his studio late into the night. I don't know if they painted, they didn't have incandescent lighting. I don't know if he did late into the night, but whatever. As he slaved over that painting hours and hours and hours and hours, but at the same time, quite delighted with his work and saying, look at, if this doesn't look like leather, if this doesn't look like leather, I'm a monkey's uncle. If this doesn't look like silk, I'm as blind as a bat. If this isn't a dead ringer for, satin, then, call me whatever, because he knew he was rendering. And it can be a lot of fun. Um, just a little insight, maybe for if anybody who's not an artist watching me. Um, Now, at the same time, you can paint yourself, like I said, into a tizzy. You can just get yourself so sick of it. So I think there's got to be balance somewhere. You have to paint with some degree of dispatch, is going to be my word, some degree of speed and proficiency. Otherwise, you drive yourself batty. Anyway, I'm very far from that right now. I'm quite enjoying painting Little Lakes shirt. This was a completely spontaneous photograph 2 days ago. She was up in my studio, as the kids often are, and I knew I was thinking about doing this portrait soon. And I said, Lake, let me take your picture. So she stood up good and tall with her shoulders back and posed for the camera. And I said, okay, now this time lean over this chair. This is a cushioned chair, a stool, a tall stool. I said, lean over this chair. Put your hands like. So I told her, I put my hands, and she did it completely. She's a little thespian, she is. And I said, put your hands in your cheeks like this. So she did it. And my point is, she was not at all dressed she was not dressed by her mother for, the portrait of her life. I don't know if this is the portrait of her life, but it certainly is at this point in her life. So I don't even know what she's wearing here, just some little blue. But I feel like the photograph is just charming, so unaffected, so authentic. So I've enjoyed painting it. Now here comes a real fun challenge. I have to paint this. I must paint this Disney watch. It's not a Mickey Mouse. It's the girl from Brave, Snow White, the girl from Frozen, Pocahontas, and one other blonde person that I don't recognize. So she probably got this at Disney World a year and a half ago when we took the whole gang down to Disney World. Anyway, she can't even tell time yet, but she proudly wears her watch. So I'm going to proudly paint it for her, of course. This will take a little while. When I finish, I want people to say, look at that watch. Not because it's a focal point, but because it's there it is. It is a focal point of sorts. And I kind of want to be like Hans Holbein and say, doggone, if that isn't a little Disney watch, I'll eat my hat. So there's the fun and the challenge of painting. There's a website my good friend Gary Bradley several years ago now told me about. The website. It's called painting stuff that looks like stuff. I think it's what it's called. You could Google it and find it. So it's a whole website. I think a bunch of artists, contribute to it. but a bunch of people painting very realistic oil paintings. That's clever, clever title. So, at least for purposes of this particular painting right here, I would qualify for the website painting stuff that looks like stuff. Now, at the same token, I'm not going to violate the painting by getting hyper realistic here. That would be out of keeping, right? It has to be in the same. This is realistic, definitely not hyper realistic, just quite realistic. And I have to maintain that level of looseness at the same time while I render the Disney watch very carefully. Okay, and also there's some fabric going on in here that I'll have fun with. The background. Oh, I should do a little bit of the background. Let me see what I'm going to do here. Yeah, sure. I'll start with this soft bristle brush. I have no idea what I'm going to do in the background up here. That was a very spontaneous. I reached for some blue. Am I all in the frame there? There you go. I reached for some blue simply because I know that warm on top of cool and vice versa. Often, also I had already had blue on my palette. That's part of the reason I reached for blue. But I know that warm on top of cool and cool on top of warm is a good trick. It almost always looks good, so to speak. I am not going to have a razor sharp edge around her hair. First of all, it wouldn't look like hair if you did a razor sharp edge. That's a mistake I think you often see younger painters doing, is making a hard edge. Hey, Lake. There's the girl herself. Come back to check on herself and see how she's doing. What do you think, Lake? I just started the background just a minute ago. And I was talking to these people about what color to put in the background. I think you look good with blue, don't you? Do you like the background? Do you like your background being blue, do you think?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Because blue's my favorite color.
Oh, and blue's your favorite color. There we go. That is huge. Thank you. I've forgotten that.
And the walls are blue.
Yeah, and the walls in my office are blue, so that makes some sense. Even though in the photograph you're standing in front of a white door, but we don't have to worry about that. I'm not gonna paint that door simply because that's what you're standing in front of.
I can guess which letter I'm standing
So it looks to me like, see, one of the things you want to do is you don't want the background all the same color. You want it to go from dark to light or light to dark. And it looks to me right now like the way to go with this is light blue up here. So light here and going dark this way. Usually you want to go the opposite of the more traditional. Light's coming from this way. So normally you would do light back here and dark here. Let me rethink this for a minute. But no, in this case, I feel like it's working so well this way that I just might buck the tradition and do.
That watch looks really good.
Oh, and I'm not done with the watch yet. I've got a long ways to go with that. So it'll look quite a bit more realistic when it's done.
It looks good.
Does it look a little bit realistic already?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now I can take this down. I'm done with that for a while.
Why?
Because I need to. And I've just added some green to this. You know what? I need a bigger brush. Excuse me, sweetie. I need to reach over this way. I'm gonna get. It's gonna take way too long using that brush. So let's go back to my favorite chip brush here.
Don't you need water for that?
Nope, because this is oil.
Oh, oil paint.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really hard to do.
Is it hard to what?
That's that's really hard to get off.
Yeah, that is kind of hard to get off. You're right. There. That's a
What about
very
my
plain
lips?
background.
What about my lips? They're so shiny.
You like your what that's so shiny? What do you like that's so
My
shiny?
lips.
Your lips. Yes, yes, your lips are so shiny. They are indeed. I like them too, sweetie pie. But that's exactly the way they look in the picture, don't they? They look
Okay,
shiny in the
hold
picture.
Your phone for me.
Oh, thank you.
Oh wait. I accidentally did something.
Oh yeah, that's all right. I'm done with it for at the moment anyway.
The
Well, I must say I like the blue background. I'll mess with it a little while. I'll change it. And this area down here I'll probably keep warm so that it's in contrast to the
There.
top.
Here, I'll hold your phone so you
Oh
can
yeah,
see.
so I can work on the watch. A lot of work needs to be done on that watch yet. So I just got started with the watch and then decided to switch and do the background. Okay, so I'm going to end this video here, folks. Let me see if anybody's left a comment while I've been working. Any comments? Any chats? There's Lake. Does it look like her? It sure does. Okay, thanks, y'all. I'll talk to you tomorrow, I hope. Bye-bye.